Good morning, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. I'm all hot, sweaty, and out taking my walk, and felt very inspired to hop on in here. And I've been ruminating as I walk. Been ruminating on a couple of things: the F word and the N word, and which is more offensive. Well, it depends on your perspective. And now's a great time that we can talk about those unthinkables, those unmentionables. That don't talk about that, because bet the F word and the N word don't mean what you think they mean. Not to me. Not in this application. N-word right now, the N-word that's most offensive in my world and the world all around me is no. A lot of people get very offended with that, even more so than the other N-word or any of the other nasties that we like to call each other when we're mad and angry and not having our way. We don't like to be told no. We don't like to be told go away. And when we're dealing with problematic energy, problematic personalities, problematic family dynamics, job dynamics, relationship dynamics, whatever they are, doesn't matter what they are. If you're coming at that equation needing to have the other person's validation, the other person's agreement, the other person to do your bidding, or they expect you to do theirs, that's a busted equation, folks. It's going to net you a need to go N-word in a minute of no. And no thank you would be ideal. However, sometimes you got to put your foot right up in it and say, absolutely not. Boundaries. We have problems with boundaries with other people because we're reared in this old paradigm, very dysfunctional paradigm, toxic relationships. We take abuse, microaggressions that turn into macroaggressions eventually, and we end up tossing back that victim-victimizer thing, the runner-chaser, the old paradigm, the, Carl Jungian archetypals. Their human dynamics are very easy to understand. They're very easy to look at and observe and see, see what's functioning and what's not. However, not always so easy to get out of that dynamic. And we can oftentimes identify it when we see it somewhere else in someone else, and we're usually pretty good at that. We like to diagnose other people all day long. However, that self-reflective stuff, not a lot of us are really great on that, and we don't always get the greatest feedback from other people about our dysfunction or our inabilities. It usually comes in a pretty snarky wave of and we don't say no often enough, in my personal opinion. At least that was the way that I was reared, and the people that I was around were reared to just kind of take abuse at a microaggression level until you die, until the relationship dissolves, until blah, 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 blah. And I encourage you, as your own sovereign nation, your own independent person, to grab a hold of your emotional sovereignty and your emotional freedom, your personal freedom, and say the N-word a lot. Use the right one. The derogatory one, not so much, not at all ideally. However, no is not a derogatory word. If you're being contrary about it, if I'm just, wanting to put my foot down and go, no, I don't want it because I don't want to, and it's the right thing to do, then me saying no is not the right application of that. So we have to use our good judgment, our right judgment, our right angle right judgment, sacred geometry, right angle right, no obtuse stuff. Whenever you need to go right angle right, please go right angle right and make things absolutely high and tight, and you'll fly it all right. It'll be okay. You have to do it that way. And when we're really struggling against something or someone and we don't want to say no, or we say no automatically, very quick judgments, snap judgments, those are usually a time when we can pull back and go, do I really have all the information here? Because a quick no may mean a resistance to change, maybe a resistance to going with the flow, listening to someone else's no, that I don't know more than you do about you necessarily. I might have some insight that could be helpful for you, but ultimately, boo, you know you better than anybody else, just like I know me better than anybody else. Doesn't mean I can't receive information, help, or assistance from other people. It's just if they've got an agenda, got cars coming and going. If there's an agenda involved and there's a toxic relationship that is dysfunctional, polluted in some way, or there's a power differential where I am needing to listen to that person because they provide financing, they provide housing, they provide food, water, safety, shelter, any of those, or emotional fulfillment of some kind, even if it's not great, if they're providing something for us emotionally on any level, if there's a power differential that somebody's standing over top of you or me, we're going to want to say yes or no, not so randomly. It's going to be more with the flow of what that person expects. And then when they're not doing that to us, we're usually doing it to them, because that's the old paradigm. That's the old dysfunctional, toxic relationship paradigm, narcissistic personality. It's all based in human psychology and human development. And anywhere that we are trauma bonding with people, we're going to be in those relationships. And anybody that tells me, well, I don't have any trauma, I'm not sure I can believe you on that one. We're in 2021, and every single person has experienced trauma and loss, and every person experiences abandonment at some kind at some time in their life. Now, not all of us are subject to physical abuse or whatever, or just terrible things like that. We're not all subject to that. However, we live in a very violent world that is letting us know routinely that it's willing to thieve, rob, steal, murder, etc. And so we're all being bombarded with that energy and those choices of very bombastic energy that's choosing badly. And so there is trauma. And as we go out into the world and we approach the world with that intention of meeting that trauma at that level, it's not going to change that problem. And you cannot change the problem at the level of the problem. You have to get above that. And how do you get above that? Get a hold of your N-word, the right one, and no, and then mean no, as in no thank you, no, do not cross my personal border, my energetic border, my financial border, my emotional border, whatever it is. Any established line that you and your divine can find, that's where you're going to find the ability to say no much more easily, to go with the flow, and to know, how do I go? How do I proceed forward? And do that in a healthy, functional way that meets my needs emotionally and meets my needs financially, physically, etc. Because every single person, don't care who you are, every single person has the ability to reach inside and get to their God frequency, their divinity, their God understanding of thee. They have that ability. I have that ability. You have that ability. We're not all taught that. We're not taught our personal empowerment or our sovereignty, generally speaking. I don't know anybody, honestly, that is that empowered personally. I do not know anyone that feels that personally empowered. And when I'm doubting myself, the last place I want to go is to somebody who's in worse shape than me, right? So I look to divinity, and I can't even look at me, my monkey mind. Forget it. Fire that one and tell her, you got to sit down. When I start hearing all the doubt and all the shame and all the and blame and oh no, that's when I have to go inside and say, all right, put monkey mind aside and let me go inside and find, where is my divine? Where can I align with higher frequency? Because everybody has that God seed. Everybody has that ability. And for me, I find a whole lot of solace, a whole lot of comfort and emotional fulfillment from within me first by reaching into that place, finding that God space and finding my divinity, my sacred, my true, my right angle right. And that's for me to do, and yours is for you to do. And when we're putting it out there for somebody else, if we need them to, give us a ruler or help us, with the protractor or whatever, in order to get our sacred geometry right, you have all the tools you need to erect your own little monuments and your own pyramids and to do sacred geometry. You're given all those tools as a human being, that you don't need anybody else's. Doesn't mean that somebody else can't observe and say, hey, have you tried this? Means, though, that if a person comes in and starts erecting your monuments and pyramids for you, that it's not really yours. It's not, it's been polluted, and it's not really intrinsically yours if you've erected a pyramid within you and called that holy, sacred, and true, and it isn't truly you, or it's painted pink and you wanted purple, things like that. Think about your life. Anywhere where you're trading off, you're taking on strife. And why? What would be the payoff for that? So I encourage anyone, everyone, me too, whenever I'm walking and going, feel a little bit nervous about this. Okay, what do I do now? That's the time for me to go inside and start talking to my guides, my ancestors, my spirit teams, and my animal teams that say, hey, I don't know what to do. I'm a little lost here. What can I do? And get out of that frequency. Become the casual observer who just says, okay, hold on a second. Before I dive headfirst into that terrible crab bucket of that feeling, why don't I stand on the precipice for just a minute? Because I can always dive into, depressing crap later. I can always get in there anytime I want to. I can go down into that terrible, yucky feeling. So how about I withdraw from that as much as possible and ask for help and say, I'm standing on the precipice of this crab bucket here, God, teams, angels, whomever, whatever words you use, divinity, could you please show me how I can keep from falling head first into that? Because it feels like I'm right there on the precipice of doing that. And I have found that the more consistent I am in asking and making statements of, I surrender to this process. It's not surrender to me and my monkey mind. No, absolutely. tell my monkey mind, look, you've got to sit down and be quiet, because there's something else in charge that's more than the human ego and the human mind. The human mind has been tampered with, toyed with, and monkeyed with my whole life. What about yours? Everybody, because we were reared by other human beings, and other human beings can't help but influence the people that they are around. And as we are growing and developing, of course we're going to be influenced. And if we were brought up by people that were not as exceptionally healthy, and created dysfunction or trauma or whatever, we make those trauma bonds early on, and then our development in all kinds of different areas of our lives is stunted. Emotionally, we may be 75, 85, 25 years old, and if we were stunted somewhere in our emotional growth and development through trauma, and it doesn't have to be that there was a, just grossly traumatic event. Lots of things cause trauma that may not look like trauma. It's each individual person's experience. However, if we're stilted at that age emotionally, we can be 55 years old and still respond at whatever age that happened, because we just haven't grown past that emotionally. Doesn't mean that we're emotionally immature in every area of our lives. It was 11:11. It means that where it's going to ping and ding that energy within me or within you, within the situation, it's going to keep that trauma bond alive for as long as we don't heal that, we don't feel that, we don't own that, or we don't know that. And that's where God equation and divinity really helped me to reach higher frequency, because it needs to be held in high regard, those feelings. However, continuing on to cause more damage, that absolutely is the N word of nope, absolutely no, absolutely not. Can you do that? Drop it on the spot. It's not going to happen. It's not allowed. It's disavowed. So disconnect. And how? So that's the N word. I wanted to catch right quick, probably go into another video in another minute. I'm almost home. Been walking for a little over an hour, so I'm getting tired. The next one is the F word, which when we say the N word, no. And then we have that backlash of, oh, that feels kind of icky to me. We have to forgive. You thought it was going to be that other F word. I like the other F word too. However, the one that I like more out of the two is not forgive, because saying the F word is a whole lot easier than actually forgiving. And I'm not talking about forgiving your assailant, forgiving your person who abused you. I'm saying forgive yourselves. And let's start with that one. That for me is my biggest bugaboo, has been to be able to forgive me. Before I can forgive you, I have to be able to forgive me. That if I feel shame, blame, and I can name myself as the abuser of me, that's really a terrible place to be, because I can't have accountability for people that have harmed me. However, I have to be able to forgive me for being in that situation, for choosing badly sometimes, for choosing things where I was hurt because I chose badly. I chose not to say no. I chose not to go with the flow that I knew was a better thing to do. And so all of those places where I'm going to be encouraging myself to go down in the dumpers, that's my human mind, my ego, and my trauma bonding that's going to have me dive headfirst right into that crab bucket and say, sure, take me down again and again and again. And spirit is endless. Divinity is endless. And there's no shame in the dimensions above earth where it's saying, well, that stupid human, if only they would stop. That's a very anthropomorphized version of divinity, God frequency, angels, etc., that I don't personally subscribe to. That anytime that we are suffering, that we are sucking wind and, really tail grabbing and trying to hang on, spirit is there. We're just not taught to believe in that, because it somehow seems like, well, if I did that before, there's no way that I could be holy enough to hold that space. And we absolutely can. I'm not Mother Mary. I'm not, divinity in action in any other way except as a human being. The more I develop that skill of tapping into that frequency, though, the more I can stay out of the ill. I can stay out of those places where I make quick decisions, irrational decisions, or decisions that are made from my trauma bonding experiences with other people. And every time I choose something other than that, I heal and move myself away from that toxic, busted frequency that it doesn't like to play nicely. And it isn't going to. It's not designed to. That system of overpowering, power differential, it's meant to have an overtaker and the overtaken. It's meant to have a victim and a victimizer. It's not a good system, because it's going to, 1444, it's going to shut me out of my own door. And I close that myself by not forgiving myself for all those places where I chose badly. And I could feel shame and blame and, and why? Because I've got plenty of opportunity. I already know how that feels. Now, how do I fix it and go forward? And part of that is saying no to any further interaction that's going to call me to those places where it's going to be challenging, making those bad decisions. And forgive others. Well, that's an interesting road to travel, that start with forgiving myself, because once I do that, I find that it's really not as difficult to be forgiving and understanding of others. It does not mean that we're going to jump back into relationships. It doesn't mean that everything's all fine and dandy. If other people are still choosing to trauma bond and keep that alive at that frequency, that's not where I can be and be at my healthiest. So it doesn't mean that forgiveness is that we all get back together in one big lump and we're okay. We still have to do the work and go away sometimes and never return to that frequency or that understanding, and call upon the best of us, the guides, the divinity, the ascension, whatever that we believe in, the sacred and the holy and the true, the right angle right stuff, to bring that into better clarity for other people, and forgive ourselves for every time that we feel hateful, mean, whatever, or whatever the feelings are that are honest, right, true, and being completely me and you in our authentic place, our sacred place that can be honest and it's safe. So on that note, I'm going to leave for now and say thank you very much for joining me on my walk. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I'm looking forward to going home and hanging out with my kitties for a little while. I hope that you have a wonderful day, whatever part of the day you're in, and I'll see you again next time, my friend. Bye.